All right, welcome. Welcome to all of you zooming in from various parts of the country. We welcome you to WEED's Art and Activism series number 14 to spotlight the work of Avotcja, interviewed by Vylma V. This presentation is created by WEED, Women's Eco-Artist Dialogue, founded in 1996 as a volunteer-run collective of female-identified visual artists, writers, curators, art historians, researchers, scientists, and others interested in highlighting this intersection of art and ecological issues. I'm Mary White, one of the co-chairs, and our Zoom administrator is co-chair Manoush Zomoradinia, and we'll be joined by other board members as well. So welcome all of you. We'll start with the land acknowledgement. And if you wish, please put in the chat your location and land acknowledgement. WEED's office sits on the territory of the Huichin, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chichonio-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County, near one of the largest shell mounds in the Bay Area. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familiar descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize the Muwekma Ohlone tribe who are campaigning to become federally recognized, the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone for researching, revitalizing, and preserving Ramaytush Ohlone history and culture, and the Confederated Villages of Lejean and the Socorate Land Trust, who are working to return native land back to Indigenous stewardship. A little Zoom housekeeping. We're recording this presentation, and please keep your audio muted during the presentation, and the host may mute you if there's extra noise. If you have questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat for the questions section. We'll stop the first recording after the presentation and immediately start a second recording for questions and answers. So first, to give a little introduction to our speaker and to our interviewer. Describing herself as a New York theater baby, Avotcja's parents were dancers after a disastrous forced attempt to learn piano. And she says, my psychopathic teacher would hit me with a ruler. She said, Avotcja took up guitar, flute, bass, clarinet, and later percussion. By 14, she was playing professionally, picking up whatever gig she could in cafes and coffee houses. By 15, she had lit out on her own and arrived in Los Angeles, where she found a home in the Southland's thriving folk scene. I was mostly performing stuff that I wrote. I've always written a lot, and these days, and those days were big singer-songwriter times. There were some folk musicians who blew me away and some blues stuff. I like storytelling music. I went forward, whatever sounded good to me, from Leadbelly to Arsenio Rodriguez. At the end of the 1960s, Avotcja spent several years working in Europe, mostly based in Denmark. When she moved back to the States, she gravitated to the Bay Area, moving to San Francisco in 1971. While active on the folk scene, she also forged close ties with Bay Area resident jazz masters like pianist Ed Kelly and drummer Smiling Winters, percussion greats Mongo Santamaria and Willie Bobo were in the mission, so Avotcja made her way there too. She's written poetry and fantastical fiction since childhood, but it wasn't until she was urged by charismatic leader Rashawn Roland Kirk that she performed her music publicly. Using a bit of reverse psychology, he got her to read at the Both and Club, and she's been sharing her words ever since. Sponsored by the California Arts Council, she was an artist in residence at the Milestone Project and the San Francisco Penal System for over 20 years. She continues to teach creative writing, storytelling, and drama, and organizes events, many events. Avotcja is a proud member of DEMO, Disability Advocates of Minority Organizations, Penn, Oakland, California Poets for this in the Schools, and is a recording artist and a DJ, among other things. Has 2 radio programs, and has just published a second revised book, which is available on her website. So now I'd like to introduce Vylma V, who is going to interview her. And Vylma is a former criminal defense civil rights attorney with over 25 years of experience as a social justice advocate, media artist, and educator. Currently, she is a freelance radio host, producer, and women's empowerment advocate. As a member of KPFA's Women's Magazine Collective, she produces and hosts the radio program Women's Magazine on the first Monday of every month from 1 to 2 p.m. on 94.1 KPFA, and has done so for the last 5 years. She's a graduate of KPFA's first apprenticeship program. Vylma is also a drummer, dancer in the Afro-Puerto Rican bomba y lana, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, folklore tradition. She recently began running again and currently runs a 5K several times a week, including she was in a race today. Maybe she can tell you about it. Vylma has been married for 28 years to her partner Cesar and is the mother of 2 fine young men, Mario 15 and Diego 20. All right, so this is our Weed series of art and activism. And it's going to be an interesting conversation because Avacha has a lot of ideas about activism, but from my perspective as a longtime admirer of her work, she is using her art as her activism in a really wonderful and creative way, and as is Vylma. So we're looking forward to the 2 of you in conversation. And a little Zoom housekeeping, we will be, I guess I already talked about that. So just put your questions in the chat if you have a question. All right, Vylma, why don't you take it away?
Great. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you all for taking the time on this Sunday evening to join us online to have this wonderful conversation with a woman who I've long admired, Avacha. So good to be in conversation and dialogue with you. So why don't we start out for people who don't know you too well. I want them to know that you are from the East Coast and the West Coast and spent time in Europe. Can you just tell us, just brief bio, where you were born and what brought you to California, how you got to California?
I was born in New York City way back in 1941. The same birth date as Emmett Till, July 25th, and came to California and in the 50s the first time. And so I'm here. I came and I left and I came and I left and what have you. I got declared what you call an emancipated minor. So I was going all over the place chasing music. I fell in love with Mexican boleros and what have you. So I went to Mexico, tasting the trios around and all over the place. I also loved the gut bucket blues from like Mississippi and those areas. And so I was chasing music. I was a music nut ever since I was a kid. So that's basically what I did. I worked as a farm worker for a short period of time. I did all kinds of jobs to support my music. And so that's what I did.
So do you think then the music bug stung you early on? What were your first experiences knowing that you wanted to do something with music or be involved with music? Tell us a little bit about how music awakened this in you.
Music is always the thing. I was a fanatic from the time I was a kid. I was such a fanatic that I was beat up a lot because I was not interested in anything else other children were supposed to be interested in. From a little tiny child, that's all I was interested in was the music. And one of the good things about New York City, I never really belonged there despite the fact that I was born there. But one of the good things is that you were surrounded constantly by all kinds of music. a lot of Puerto Rican music, Cuban music, Trinidadian music, music from the deep South, a lot of gut bucket blues. And it was there all the time, everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing music coming out of people's hallways, out of their windows, on the street corners, by the subways. And so the music was everywhere, and that was good because that's what all I was interested in. But it made me a real weirdo because the stuff that children were supposed to be interested in, I was not interested in it. I could care less. And as a result, I got beat up a lot.
So do you think that being sort of that outsider as a young person kind of stuck with you, and you've always had an affinity to stick up for marginalized people or recognize people who are kind of on the outs? Can you talk a little bit about your identity with people who maybe aren't on the top of the pile, but you're always being a voice for them?
That's an interesting question. I never thought about being a voice for them, but I was part of them. So I was just, it was our voice, you know. It's when I was that kid, that little kid, because I was so little, especially when I was a farm worker, I was literally adopted by Mexican men and Filipino men. And so contrary to popular mythology, everybody was not interested in being what we call a mujeriego. They definitely adopted me as their kid. And so I basically was protected by them and what have you. And as I said, the music was the thing. It kept me safe, and these other people kept me safe. So, I mean, my friends now call me a Mexican because I've been so surrounded by Mexicans all these years that my Spanish is more Mexican than it is Puerto Rican. So anyway, I hope that's the question.
Yeah, the Mexican I can totally relate to because my kids are Mexican, which you know.
Babies.
And you mentioned your birth date sharing with Emmett Till, which seems to have a huge impact. Talk a little bit about your experience being born the same day as him, and also recognizing his death, his terrible murder.
If I start crying, forgive me. They say I was born on the same date as Emmett Till. I was a kid, as I say, a very strange kid, running around trying to play some music. And I was at a friend of mine's house, another strange, weirdo kid who was a music nut. And I was waiting for them to do something. I can't remember what it is. And they had a Jet magazine on their coffee table. And that was the magazine that had the picture that had just come out of Emmett Till and what they did to him. And I had never seen anything so horrible in my life. I was a teenager, the exact same age as that teenage boy that got brutalized. And it really tore me up. It really did something horrible to me. I would never really talk about it until just a couple of years ago. I started talking about it, and I'm doing Afro Solo next weekend. So if you're in the Bay Area, please come and check it out. You can look at my website or just look Afro Solo. And I'm doing a thing dedicated to his mother, because that was the strongest human being. What she did when she pulled the cover off that coffin, a lot of things that people give credit to other people for wouldn't have happened, like Rosa Parks. If you read her biography, she says she sat down because of that Emmett Till incident. Martin Luther King talks about it, the Montgomery boycotts, all of those things were triggered by what she did. They tried to kill her. She obviously was a very hard woman. She did not get killed, but it really affected me. I don't think I ever got over it. I don't think I ever will get over it. And I think she's one of the greatest, the strongest human beings that has ever lived. Her picture should be on, especially women talking about women power. I never see her picture anywhere. Her picture should be everywhere. Just a powerful, powerful example of what women can do. So I'll shut up because I'm gonna start crying again.
We want you to talk as much as you want, though, for sure. So in the 60s, the civil rights movement is happening around you. What's your experience? Are you starting to write? Are you performing them? What was your experience during the 60s?
I was already performing. I started performing in the 50s when I was a kid. And I was involved like everybody else was involved, in the sit-ins and the walk-ins and all the rest of the stuff. But I was definitely involved in the music scene. And when Mary was talking about the bio, because I've always played acoustic music, I've never really liked, for me, I don't dislike it. For other people, if they choose to play electronic instruments, I don't. I've always liked acoustic music, even my band now. we play jazz and Latin jazz and blues, but we're acoustic. And so that during those days, acoustic guitar, etc., the only people that really accepted that were the folkies. And during those days, the folkies were more open-minded than they are now. And so you would go to concerts. You could have Buffy Sainte-Marie on the same concert with Charles Lloyd or John Handy or whatever. And so they were very, very open and supportive of me. So I don't know. That's that. I just wanted, everything was about music. It still is. I can't help myself. Music is the medicine that keeps me strong. And I do believe that music is the strongest international language. It speaks to everybody's heart. That's what makes it so strong. I don't speak Japanese, but I love Japanese music. I've never been to Ireland or speak the Gaelic, but I've always loved Irish storytellers. Even before I understood the language, I could feel the music in the language and what have you. So, I mean, that's, anyway, I'm talking outside of my neck, so.
We're here to listen to you talk about you, so that's okay. I'm going to raise something that we've gone back and forth, and I think you had with Mary. The word activism, are you an activist? Tell us a little bit your theory about that, because I know that you kind of bristle at being called an activist. So explain to us, enlighten us what your ideas are around activism.
I think that whatever people want to call themselves is fine with me, but I don't call myself an activist. I'm a musician and a writer, and other people have always called me that. I, you know, Poppy would always say, you know, he said, you know, if you're in a show, the only star in the show is the show itself. And humility is probably the greatest gift that you can have in creativity. And so I'm just part of the show. And it's not about doing, you know, being a superwoman and, oh, I saved so-and-so because I took part in this benefit or what have you. I think it's about having good manners. You know, I'm part of the show. Part of the show means that if a kid has a snotty nose, it's my duty to wipe it. That's, you know, I'm from that era where we actually took care of each other's kids. And you know, if there's something that, you know, that I can do to help somebody get across the street, or if I've got, like a friend of mine was sick during all this COVID stuff, they got it. And so a day that there was supposed to be a benefit for me, I just took everything and took the money and got the groceries for her, which does not make me a superstar because I've been sick and she's been in my corner as well. So that's the way, I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. I think it's about us being responsible citizens. And I don't call that activism. I call that being a responsible human being. So if whatever people want to call themselves, good. I just do what I do because it's there to do.
And as both of us being from Puerto Rico and having a Puerto Rican heritage and being very tied into what goes on in the island, can I ask you, and I know you're very humble too, but can I ask you about some of the work you did in the post-Hurricane Maria period and what drew you to do that? I know, but for others, talk to us a little bit about what you did when our beautiful island was hit with Hurricane Maria, 2 hurricanes in rapid succession about 5 years ago now.
Well, you were part of it, so you know part of that story. But the reality is you know, when Maria tore up La Isla, I mean, we are friends, like Latin Rhythm Boys, friends who they don't even know where some of their relatives are, if they're still alive. You know, it's just, this thing is really horrendous. Politicians, there's Utuado is in the house. Mwah! Anyway, my heart from Utuado is here, and I'm drinking coffee from Utuado right now. But anyway, when that happened, there's also the same time, the first benefit that we did, you were part of, something happened in Texas, that there was some flooding that went down, and Maria also tore up a couple of other islands really bad, including Dominica. So the first benefit we did was for Puerto Rico, for then Dominica, and for Houston. And the reality is that people are real snakes. And if you don't have, I don't care where it is. I mean, I've done benefits for everything, Sri Lanka and what have you. If you don't have contacts on the ground, then the stuff that you raise for those people, they'll never get it. So I'm grateful. I have contacts on the ground. In fact, right there, you see a spot there with 2 beautiful people, Susan Couture and Roberto Herrera. That's Utuado right there. And that is my contact. And so Mary Mary, who we call Santa Maria, and what have you. And several of us from our crew, we've been sending stuff up there, Roberto, because the roads, I mean, the horrendous government criminality that's going on, they're not doing the business. So Roberto and other folks are getting stuff. He's getting stuff around Utuado. I have friends who are getting stuff to Mocha and Ciala and what have you. But that's why you do it. You get the stuff to the people and they get the stuff there. But if you don't have contacts on the ground, you can forget it. And so if you're really interested in helping people anywhere, make sure you know the people that you're sending the stuff to will get it to the people you want to get it. And I'm very grateful. I see several people in here have really helped. There's a friend in this is what we're doing right now from the Islamic Center. I see a fellow from the Strawberry Creek Quakers group who felt with it. From the, I forget that Baptist church, I see there in here. They've helped us get stuff there. And so that I'm truly grateful. And that's what we're supposed to do. Yeah, even if I did not know anybody from the island, I would do it because that's what I'm supposed to do. You know, it's happening and it's not over. It's a horrible thing that's happening. And, you know, up in the mountains, it's still very, very bad. So it's like, if you can't see it, they try to pretend it's not, you know, it's not happening, but believe me, it is happening. And so we're still getting stuff there. And I want to thank all the folks who have helped us get it there.
And then how do you translate that frustration of seeing that people who are struggling, there's a lot of corruption, and not just in Puerto Rico, but across the United States? How does that relate to, does that make you want to write poetry? Does that make you want to write? Like, how to make that connection between what you're seeing around, what's happening, and how you translate that into your art?
The art translation to me, Roberto, I think you need to mute your microphone.
Aha. I don't know how to do this.
Mute.
Let's see.
She got it. Anyway, what, you know, at the risk of sounding real country, though I've been called that a lot of times, is when the ancestors speak or when spirit speaks to me, I write. The muse talks to me, I write. So when I got all that coffee from the mountains of the island, gave birth to a powerful poem, which you'll probably hear later. You know, when we do the thing, Mary was talking about the Born to Drum Camp. Vylma is part of that. I'm part of that International Women's Drum Festival. What happens there with all these powerful women? The ancestors jump on me and they say, okay, you're going to write this. And they won't let me sleep. I mean, I get in the middle of the night, they'll go, oh, I got to write stuff down because if I don't write it down, I'm not sleeping, you know? So I'm one of these people who I've heard people that can't write until somebody gives them what do you call it? I forget the word.
A prompt or a contract?
No, the ancestors, we want to be, show how prehistoric I am. We are everything we've ever been. That's how DNA works. That's how cloning works. And so that's how we could write. I've never committed suicide. I've never been a man and I've never been in the military. I do not believe in war or fighting in the military, but I have friends who have been there. And obviously some relatives of mine must have been there because one of the strongest things I've written has been about what happened to people who have been there and go through this horrible, horrible, you know, damage as a result of being forced to do things horrible in war. So I say, you know, whether it's the ancestor spirit, the muse, I don't care what you call it, I'm grateful. It speaks to me, and I'm gonna write. And if I don't write or, you know, play some music about it, it's not gonna let me sleep. So I surrender, I accepted the gift. And Papi say, you got the gift, you go with the gift, it'll help you grow into a positive human being. If you have the gift and you don't use your gift might use you. And I always use the wonderful Hitler as a perfect example of what a frustrated artist can do. So with that, if you have gifts, use them. If you don't use them, they're going to use you. You might not like the way they use you. Anyway, so that's the answer to that one.
That's real talk right there. Avacha, let's talk a little bit about the book you have, because I know there's a poem that you're going to read. You mentioned that we're both part of the Born to Drum Women's Camp that happens every summer. And Avacha has been a teacher there. She's taught poetry and she's taught some rhythms. Do you want to read a poem? Because I know just for folks who are watching this, Avacha performs poetry solo, and she also performs with a background of music. And you're going to see both. You're going to see her do a live poem in a few minutes or so. And then we also have a clip that will show of her actually performing with her band and John Santos and some luminaries. But why don't you share a poem with us right now? Or what? Go ahead.
But I also want to say, I do not work with background musicians. I don't believe that. I'm just, as I say, I'm part of the show and I'm part of the band. And I do
stand corrected.
When you work with the quality of artists that I am very grateful to work for, oh no, they are hardly background people. So you surrender your ego and you melt into each other. We call it locking in, and you become one. And when that happens, that's the highest high you could ever get into. I don't need to use drugs and alcohol. I get loaded to the gills on just the vitamin B flat and the beauty that happens when artists get together. So with that, I want to do this because what happens at the drum camp, I do a workshop that's called When Ancestors Speak Through Rhythm. And I definitely believe that ancestors speak to us all the time. And obviously, there's a couple of people I see who've been in that workshop. I see Em is here and maybe some other folks. But you know, what happens is if you surrender that those people that are written all over your DNA will talk to you one way or another. And you get these, everybody's had an idea, you don't know where it came from. You have no idea where it came from, what it's based on. That's one of those ancestors say, okay, hey, you're gonna tell my story right now. So when we do this workshop, When Ancestors Speak Through Rhythm, it's not just about the ancestors or rhythms or poetry or what have you. It's about also musicians locking into each other, poets and musicians locking into each other. Because a lot of times what happens is this fantasy of having the musician back me up. Oh, how am I going to have a John Santos back me up? Give me a break. You know, what happens is that this workshop, you learn how to lock into each other. So you're working with each other, you feel each other, and you get into each other's rhythm until you become that one thing. So that's what that workshop is about. So anyway, I'm going to do this called Daughters of the Drum, and I dedicate it to all these women that come from all over the world for the International Born to Drum Festival. And it's in Spanglish, but I think you'll get the message. Daughters of the Drum. Oh, my book. Clarification on that. My book is like two books. The original, With Every Step I Take, was 200 and a couple of pages. This is almost 300 pages long. So you're getting 2 books in one if you get this one. So anyway, this is in the second one, With Every Step I Take 2. Daughters of the Drum. We were born to drum. Somos hijas rítmicas. We were conceived in rhythm, whether we knew it or not, or wanted it or not. It was and has always been about upholding la clave en el alma, the beauty and the sanctity of the rhythm that created us, the rhythm that is us. Somos el latido de la naturaleza, the rhythm of our mother's labor pains announced our coming, and it's always the rhythm of our breathing that lets the world know we're alive. Míralo. Bellas, fuerzas, místicas, pero picosas. Feel it. Feel it, feel it. We walk, sing, pray, and dance, and cry in it. Every single word that flows out of our mouths is a rhythmic declaration of our presence. Somos la esencia de la bomba, and even our sacred mother nature dances rhythmically through the seasons every single year, keeping the rhythm of our lives in balance. Our universe is an inescapable symphony, ritmos sagrados, held together by vibration, by the sound of the sum of us, the always right on time, magical, rhythmical timelessness of us. Somos la fiebre apasionada de la rumba, the heart of bebop and kubop was born in us, is creation's gift to us. Somos el corazón del tambor, born in the womb of creativity, an undeniable rhythm personified. Wake up, world. Wake up, world. Mira, 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 no. Listen, we are your children, and we were born to drum. So that's that.
I love it. I love it. Talk a little bit about how you create in Spanish and English. There's a quote that is on the Weed website about how you can't pick one or the other. Each language gives you a perspective. Talk a little bit about being a bilingual artist and creating in both languages.
You know, as I say, when it comes to me, it comes to me. And so sometimes it comes all in English, sometimes it comes all in Spanish, and sometimes it comes in Spanglish. And I'm so grateful for people like Pedro Juan Pietre and Jose Montoya, two kings of Spanglish. They legitimized Spanglish for us. They made it so, you know, because people, you say, oh yeah, you do it either English or Spanish. I never chose to try to speak to the king of England or Spain and could care less. So if it comes to me in Spanish first, I'll do it in Spanish and then I'll do English. If I can translate, and some I can't translate into either or, you know, whatever language. And so like this one, it came to me in Spanglish, so that's where it is. So.
Lovely. And I know you're working on the poem with Emmett Till. You're not going to share it with us, but how does that work when it comes to you and you just talk about that?
That one has been making me crazy now for the last couple of, I say 5 or 6 weeks now. I've been working on this. It's called like Sing a Song of Mamie Till. And I've wanted to write something about her for years and I couldn't even say it because it's such a horror story. But it's happening, and I say if you want to see it, please come to the Afro Solo. It's on Valencia, and it's happening next weekend. I think it's Friday and Saturday. If you look at my website avotcja.org, it's up there, and please come and check it out. And usually, what happens when I'm doing a show like Afro Solo, I'll commit everything to memory. There's no way I can commit this to memory because it's still happening. She's still haunting me. And so it's not finished. So it will be mostly reading and what have you. But I mean, I think it's going to be one of the greatest things I've ever written. And she deserves all the praise that anybody could possibly give her. I can't even imagine doing what she did, but she literally changed history despite the fact that she's been buried by the snakes in power. Anyway, that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah, it was very powerful how she insisted that her son's casket be open so people can see what the white supremacy and what, you know, those people did in that period. So yeah, I agree, that's super powerful and has sent a message that is echoed through the last decades. Avacha, someone who's young, who doesn't write poems or is not an activist, I know you don't like the word, but what's your message to them or your advice to women who maybe, how do you listen to that muse or how do you put yourself in tune and give some advice for women who maybe want to create but feel like, oh, I don't know the right language, or I don't feel good enough, or I don't have the experience. What do you say to folks who want to be more creative and aren't quite where they want to be?
Well, creativity, like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And everybody talks about it. Everybody wants to be a star. I don't know how many times people say, oh, Avacha, I wish I could, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. Because if you did, you'd be practicing like the rest of us. It takes a lot of work to be a good artist, you know. And if you accept, as Poppy said, if you accept the gift, then accept the responsibility that means. That means you're going to have to work very, very hard. And I think that, you know, a lot of people are afraid of it when they find out that they have, like, I thought I was nuts because everybody else thought I was nuts when I was a kid. And they did a very good job of trying to convince me that I was. But if it happens with children that they learn very young, and I know you got one of them, one of your babies, he just, ever since, I mean, I can remember a little tiny thing. Every time he come, his father, she would bring him in, he'd come running up to me on the stage. He didn't care, on stage, side of the stage, and hug. He knew he had the bug, and he knows he has the bug. And I think he's playing with John Calloway's group now, yeah. Anyway, it's like, if a kid has this thing going, don't deny them that, because you turn him into a frustrated lunatic, you know. There's something beautiful that happens. And if they've got the courage to work and deal with it, you know, help them do it, you know. Otherwise, they wind up being these frustrated, crazy people, because a lot of people, they get scared. They all of a sudden, you start feeling that, as I say, that ancestor, what have you, and you start feeling all these emotions and feel like a walking pincushion because you feel the pain of something like that Emmett Till thing or whatever, you know. But, oh, no, I'm not going to deal with it. It's eating your insides up, and it's going to do that until you deal with it. And so that one is what I say. I'd like to read a poem that I want to put out about, you know, I call it the we of us, because I think that one of the greatest crimes that we've committed about ourselves is that not only fighting that creativity, but fighting the balance that happens when we're not afraid to accept it and accept our part in the whole. Because it's not all about me or you. Oh, they want to be a star, but they want to be a star. want to be part of the stars. And there's women in the heavens who are a whole lot more than one star. And until you can accept that and practice a lot so you can get up there, you're never going to get there. So anyway, this is called the We of Us. When I write, I dress yesterday's visions and today's rhythms, and I tap dance all over the page with every poem. And with every single word I write, I am reliving everything these culturalist cultures have tried their best to bury and replace with the sadness of their emptiness. And I continue to sing, keeping the ancestors alive by singing their songs, expanding traditions with new words and strange lands. I am the recognition of all the traditions the soulless have tried to erase. But with a giant thank you in our hearts, we joyfully climb out of the acceptable respectability of their passionless graveyards and are reborn in every poem we write. We sing to you through the rhythmic fire of samba. Every rumba reinstates your presence in our DNA. We cry the unashamed truth through the bluest of blues, exploding like La Bomba in the face of colonial insanity, and boldly fight the power with doo-wop, hip-hop, and jazz. I refuse to silently accept the unacceptable suicidal demise of our existence when every single day I can taste the we of us. I say, every single day I can taste the we of us striving. We are more than just surviving. We are cultural alchemists, an undeniable force of creativity and motion. And through our creativity, we decolonize our legacy and free our minds and spirits. We are a whole lot more than you and me. It's all about the you in me, the me and you, the we of us, writing our way out of the delusion of manifest destiny, self-righteous madness, and reinvigorating the dreams our ancestors died for. So that's
beautiful, beautiful. Okay, what I want to do now is I want people to experience Avotcja with all her musicians, not background, but all together. So what we'll do is we'll play that clip. So Manoush, get that ready. You'll be able to see Avotcja playing with musicians in sync all together. And then at the same time, you can get your questions ready because this clip will run about 7 minutes. So we'll be at the point where we're going to end the recording and then go to the new recording for questions and answers. So while we're experiencing this, and I'll let you have a say, Mary, in a second. Once we experience this, we're going to come back, end the recording, and do question and answer, unless Mary changes what I'm saying. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, maybe describe the context of this clip.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Avotcja. Why don't you intro it? Do you want to say a few words, Avotcja, about it before it goes? You're muted, Mama.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. John Santos did an amazing gig at Freight and Salvage. He had several poets, myself being one of them. And I wrote this thing for the coffee growers in up in Puerto Rico, up in the mountains. And I'm so grateful that Roberto is here because he's one of my angels here. But anyway, what John did is put some heavy duty bomba plena behind it. And so you'll hear what it sounds like. This is definitely, he'll take you to the island. So with that, I'm going to shut up.
the mountains of Borinquen. It's raining cafe. Indescribably precious gifts in little tiny coffee beans. Proud and homegrown and more numerous than raindrops. Cafe con aroma sini, while this coffee is sacred, delicious and precious, a real mountain treasure. A treasure, un licor natural. Y orgánico y 100% del pueblo borincano. And with every cup of café, el mañanero, and café lealtad, I am reborn. I say, I am reborn in las montañas de la Isla del Encanto. It's raining café. But even here, 3,595 miles away from it, the Fruta Sagrada del Campo, I daily drink in the power of these mountains. These mountains, and I am energized every single day when I taste the essence of Café Cibales. I can feel the naturaleza of Ciales come alive inside my insides. Café Oro de Puerto Rico, ay qué rico. Café increíble con su aroma sabroso. A sacred encanto that tastes of majesty. Y con cada trago de nuestra café subo al cielo. In the mountains. I say in the mountains of La Isla del Encanto, it's raining café. Royal coffee beans. Royal coffee beans in Tesoro Nacional with hypnotic aromas that smell of the wildest of freedom. Untamable freedom. Libre like the dirt of the mountains that gave them birth. Oh, yes, I say yes, I confess I'm hooked. I get drunk with every cup of café de aquí Utuado, majestuoso tesoro sagrado de las montañas, and in my house, tomo el sabor 100% de las montañas, and I shamelessly admit it. There is not 1 ounce of doubt in my mind. I am a proud 100% unapologetic coffeeholic, and in my house, I say in my house, it's raining café 100% from the mountains of La Isla del Encanto. I'm hooked. I get drunk with every cup of café de aquí Utuado, my esposo, tesoro sagrado de las montañas. In my house, tomo el sabor 100% de las montañas. I shamelessly admit it. I say I shamelessly admit it. There's not 1 ounce of doubt in my mind. I'm a proud 100% unapologetic coffeeholic. And in my house, it's raining café. 100% from the mountains of La Isla del Encanto. From La Isla del Encanto, La Isla del Encanto, La Isla del Encanto, La Isla de mi corazón. Eso sí. Oh. Give them another big hand. Oh, with that, I gotta go and sit down and melt off from some of this sweat they got on me.
Avacha.
que lo sepas. Bravo. Bravo. Okay, we are at the point where I think we're going to do our question and answer. Is that right, Mary? So we're going to end this recording. I hope people can put their questions in the chat.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you both for this wonderful chance to get to know you both. And Weed is a wonderful website that we will be archiving this presentation. And then we'll also archive the questions and answers. So we put them in the chat. And if you'd like to see further programming, you can always donate to our website. This is all a completely volunteer organization. So we're always happy to get support.